Well, happy Friday, Smite fans, and welcome to day number 2 of the SCC qualifier event. Yesterday, we were in North America, but today, we're going to be moving across the waters to the EU region. We're going to see our first 8 teams out there of the 16 in this double elimination tournament for 6 coveted spots in the EU SCC to start out Season 9. My name is J-Mac Tucker. With me, Mifflin.
Hey.
We join me on the desk for our first sets of the day. Before we go into all of our sets, though, we do have to go over a lot of the teams. We're going to look at the schedule, the bracket, because it's a big bracket out there. But the most important thing, let's talk about the schedule real quick, because we do have one very important thing with this schedule. Originally, we're going to have our 4 out here, but there was a forfeit in our first match between Team Bisco and Sacred Hunters. That will be a 2-0 going to Bisco for the automatic win there. But we still have 3 other sets to go through today. We got Radical Rodents and JUSTF6, Team Copyright, and Otrios Angels, and Ogie Bogies versus Zindine Zindane will be our matchups for today. Mifflin, any of these really kind of sticking out to you here as far as like big names though you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I think Ogie Bogies is pretty cool. I really like the rhyme there. Big fan of that one. Really hoping I'm not casting set 4, because having to say Ogie Bogies versus Zindine Zindane I feel like that'd get old for me personally. I mean, looking forward to whoever does have to cast that and will have to say all that multiple times.
Good news, that's us.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure that's gonna be us on that one
very
too.
cool.
So. But we also got Team Copyright. I think Team Copyright's probably one of the better just name-wise out of the regions out here. But our first one of the day specifically, Radical Rodents and JUSTF6. We'll talk a little bit about Radical Rodents here because they're kind of the underdog team going up into this set, specifically up against JUSTF6, a much more tenured team. We saw them during the SPL qualifiers. But Radical Rodents does have at least a couple of notable names here. Probably the biggest one out of all of them, Fails, and then also Ferricrick, if you've been kind of sitting around the scene for a long time.
And I have been, so I'm very familiar with these 2 players, man. Fails and Ferricrick have been around for as long as the SEC has been a thing. SOC, SEC, and I think even some brief stints in the SPL as well. Fails and Ferricrick, of course, going to be the jungle and mid combo of the Radical Rodent squad. I'm excited to watch them. They've got some relatively new talent around them. I don't have a whole lot of data on Panvich or Jacob HL or Zolot. I haven't seen these guys too often. Maybe occasionally in some of these streams you'll see them tearing up the ranked queues, but as far as competitive play goes, a little bit untested.
Yeah, it's been a little while since we've had Ferricrick really kind of dominating into that EU SCC scene back whenever more towards Season 7 was like his last real big stint here, kind of spent some time over in the SCC. Fails has also had quite a bit of time in the SCC. Some long-standing names for these 2, but like you said, the other 3 on the team, maybe a little bit relatively unknown, and that always kind of can bring a curveball to as far as some of the drafting is concerned, because at least for us, we don't necessarily know, what gods are always going to be picked up with these. Just from highlights alone, I can imagine Ferricrick might be looking towards this Giannis that seems to be one of his more kind of coveted picks here up during that time. But with all the changes to the meta, the changes up to the items, we haven't really seen a whole lot of Giannis play in general.
No, we saw a couple players try and break out the Giannis during the SPL play-ins. I believe Leon tried to play it a couple of times, but it's a very unorthodox style in a meta where I feel like artillery mages that have AoE, long-distance damage are really prioritized. Things like the Thoth, like the Agni, just toss out your damage from a range. Persephone as well. They're so strong with this new double flat pen build, whereas Giannis is just kind of like this assassin. He's just in the backline. He's going to throw out his little attack and then fade away into the jungle. Doesn't really get to just expand himself in these team fights.
His whoosh attack?
Yeah.
Okay. His whoosh attack. They're going up against JUSTF6, though, a veteran squad in the EUSCC. We did see them during the SPL qualifiers a few weeks back. Now going to be trying to make their run here in the SCC qualifiers to see if they can at least reclaim their spot that they had here. A lot of big names if you don't already remember them. Listemix, Masskill, Sodos, Rotwin, and Toddy GR. We rounding out this squad. Rotwin kind of claimed as Goatwin was the nickname that he picked up during the SPL qualifiers. His Horus play was seen as one of the best in the EU SCC. His Bacchus was also a very notable god pickup there. And even, kind of some shies of this Kepri too. So I'm very curious as to how this dueling is going to go for the JUSTF6 team.
Yeah, I'm most excited to see whether or not JUSTF6 has kind of maintained that team play style that they developed throughout the SPL plans. We got to talk to them a couple times in interviews, and they said, look, we don't get to play against the North American guys too often. It's a very different style of play, but they seem to have adapted to it very well throughout that week. It's aggression. Whereas I would say during the regular season, JUSTF6 in the SEC last year were a more so passive team, waiting for those late game team fights, very reminiscent of that traditional European Smite style. But if they can bring that level of aggression that we saw from them in the SPL plans, it could work out. It's a very potent, just run it down, make sure that these teams that are all also looking for the late game team fight aren't able to build up their strength, aren't able to build up their coffers and their items to the point where they can group up as 5. It's bring the fight in early. JUSTF6 did it very well. I think against the only other EU representative, like 2 18-minute games from JUSTF6, just really impressive play.
Yeah, one of the more dominant sets that we had during that SPL qualifiers was them up against Thunderhead. It was very quick ones here, and very quickly we get to now jump into picks and bans for game number 1 to see where everything lines out as far as the drafts are concerned. We can now maybe get a look and kind of see what play style we're going to see out of Radical Rodents specifically. This is first round. If they lose here, they're not out of the tournament just yet. They do drop down to the loser's bracket, but they have to make a much longer run in order to try and qualify in here as compared to if you can stay on the top end here. But first gods that are getting banned away are going to be Fenrir and, okay, I was going to say like Fenrir and Serket or Amaterasu, Kabrak, Thor as a first ban out of JUSTF6.
Yeah, I mean, Thor's not good IMO, and here's the thing about how I love Thor. I do. That god's super cool. He's very fun. He can do some stuff. He's got global presence. His damage output is okay. He's got great poke potential, but I feel like right now, before we see some buffs coming his way, before anything like that, he really is struggling to finish off those kills. He really doesn't dominate like some of these other junglers. We see things like the Kleena that are just going to outscale you in damage, or if we're talking about facilitator jungles, he doesn't have the same level of CC and tankiness as some of these other picks, Kabrakin, some of the warriors that we see in the jungle, Gilgamesh, Erlong Shen. I feel like Thor really has slowly just become outshined in the meta, which is why we saw JMac kind of emphatically shaking his head when it got banned out.
Yeah, it's just kind of a question mark compared to everything else that we've seen so far in these last couple of weeks here. Something that hasn't shined away from being a top pick has been this Bastet that gets locked in first. But as far as the other bans are concerned here with it, Fenrir, Thoth, no question there. Sol maybe a little questionable. She seems to have fallen out of the meta a bit, but specifically I think this just feels like a target ban against Sotos, as it seems to be his #1 pick specifically. And Kabrakin and Balone on the other side for JUSTF6. And also, no surprise, Medusa has kind of reigned supreme as one of the top hunters in the meta right now.
She's just so strong, man. Viper Shot, I think, was it towards the tail end of Season 8 got a buff, or maybe the very beginning of Season 9, but now that just does so much damage early on, Lacerate as well, now dealing damage to the wave, means that her clear is incredibly strong. You're not really the god of, hey, well, I'll beat you in the 1v1, but in the 2v2, you can just out-clear me every time. Now Medusa kind of plays that role as well. So I think that we are going to see a lot of her throughout this week and in both Europe and North America. On the other end, though, we were talking about that Thor ban. I want to kind of go back towards it. Should have probably been a Bastet ban. Now that we're looking at the draft that Radical Rodents have got for themselves, that god has been dominant in 2 roles. We can see it in the jungle, we've seen it in the soul lane, and we've seen it pop off in both. Haven't really seen a lot of Thor pop off. Hopefully JUSTF6 has got a plan for this one.
Yeah, it feels like it has to just be a target ban against fails more than anything else. It's the only thing I can really think of this Thor kind of being the, you gotta ban this one if you're going up against this guy probably here. Amaterasu and Hachiman gonna be locked in on the side of Radical Rodents. Hachiman, who was probably one of the safer hunters in the meta, was kind of sitting around like that top 3, top 5 for such a long time throughout the majority of Season 8. Maybe a little curious to see him getting picked up this early in the draft. Not really a hunter that I would have expected to see, necessarily need to be picked up top 3 though, Mifflin.
No, I think Hachiman has almost been holistically replaced in the meta by Charybdis. That god is just safer. She's got great damage output. She's got phenomenal team fight presence, even better objective secure because you can actually hit objectives with your ultimate. We remember Hachiman used to be strong in the Jingwei, Hachiman, Heimdall meta when those were the 3 safest hunters, and then, Charybdis kind of blew up all their spots. I am surprised to see it locked in this early, especially considering how much we've seen the dual lane meta shift up recently. It's become more so about aggression, who can control the lane, who can get in towards those neutral camps more easily because there's just so much farm on that side of the map. Hachiman, I do not think will be able to line up against things like Medusa very easily.
Yeah, will be a Khepri on the other side here for JUSTF6, as that will round out the dual lane with the Medusa Khepri, and then a Tiamat and an Osiris so far for JUSTF6. Agni and Bacchus, no surprise seeing them banned away. Bacchus, one of the top supports in the meta right now, such an aggressive pick. And we saw yesterday just how potent this support specifically can be, especially when you couple them with a Frenzy that's kind of become one of the top first pick relics out of that support role, and then Erlong Shen a Wheelish. And in this Kuzenbo, we saw him kind of get picked up a little bit yesterday in the support role. It seems that we'll be seeing him go there again, Mifflin.
Yeah, I like Kuzenbo a lot into things like Medusa. You're going to apply that Viper shot. If you can get in front of it, you're reflecting so much damage in these fights. Medusa has a large AoE ultimate. She can't exactly be choosy with who she's hitting with it, so Kuzenbo's got a very easy reflect target there as well. And having a non-standard escape in the last rate, stops on first enemy got hit. Kuzenbo's body is pretty large, pretty easy to make sure that Medusa is always out of position.
Let's game number 1 here in our first set of the day in the EU region for the SCC qualifiers. Radical Rodents up against JUSTF6. And a tall task here for this team in the Radical Rodents to try and take down JUSTF6, who want to reclaim their SCC spot. Once again, it's J-Mac Mifflin and Doug joining us today as we get into our first game. No surprises really on where everything gets locked in. Seeing the Amaterasu in here surprisingly actually make our way through a draft. We will be seeing Bastet go into the jungle, I think, for the first time this weekend, Mifflin.
I think we saw it one time yesterday, right?
Maybe.
I could be making that up.
Maybe so.
I've got terrible recall.
It feels like it's been a while since we've seen her go in the jungle.
Generally heads into the soul lane because Nika is a monster, and whatever he does, the entirety of the rank scene decides, is incredibly strong. And you know what? This time around, he was right. That said, Bastet in the jungle is going to be able to get her presence known a little bit earlier on the map. It's going to put a lot more threat on the beads of JUSTF6, and not a whole lot of beads available. Toddy GR seems to have used his. Nobody's going to know about that. They'll be back up before ultimates are available, and then the only other beads you have to concern yourself with is Isotos on the other end. But I think maybe more interesting is the fact that Serket was available for 10th pick this time around. That is wild. I mean, Maskill gets away with murder. Keep in mind, this is before we see the minor rework, the minor rebalance to Serket, where she becomes more so a scaling god. So she still has incredibly high base damage, which is going to allow Maskill to make a decision. Does he want to go full damage, or does he want to be a tank? He should probably go tank. Tank seems to be the best case for Serket.
Yeah, kind of that maybe bruiser, maybe even kind of sliding a little bit more towards just heavy tank out of there. Seems to have kind of been the call for the Assassins. Rotwin will get pushed through that wave, and that's kind of the presence that we've been seeing at this Kuzenbo. You get aggressive very early, get a big push through the wave, you can deal a quarter or more of a tank's health and even more on that on one of these squishier targets here. But with those beads still down for 40 seconds, you can see Toddy has to play just a little bit safer in the lane, but they are still pushing up fairly far, even up towards this lane, even despite the fact he doesn't have that relic up.
Yeah, nobody knows Toddy GR doesn't have beads, so if you just play like you have them, I think that we're going to see the opposition respect them as if they were up, right? So don't want to show your hand too early. Toddy GR going to keep up that aggression.
Panvik a little bit low here, but those health potions and that passive of his first ability coming in clutch to keep that sustain up. So Panvik will stay alive here up against Listemics in that solo lane. Now, Osiris, I'm a little surprised with how little Osiris that we've seen compared to how much, you know, the auto attack warrior meta has dominated. It's been just a lot of Bologna and a lot of Amaterasu more than anything. Yeah,
Osiris is one of the original Death Toll abusers. Those cleave auto attacks going to get a lot of value in the lane, a lot of sustain there as well. But Amaterasu's ability to shred objectives so much higher, Bologna's ability to actually have burst damage in the middle of a team fight, and phenomenal setup with that ultimate, as well as objective burn with the Eagles rally, I think has kind of just brought her, or those two, a little bit more so to the forefront.
Well, will be a blue buff invade here by Listemics and Maskill. Good poke out of Maskill over onto Fails at that top end of the Harpy camp. Kind of forced Fails to sit back a little bit and really set up for that invade. Speaking of an invade, we do have another one here at the purple buff. A dash in by Rotwin will help to secure that buff and prevent Jacob from being able to try and secure that one out. So far, JUSTF6 have already amassed themselves about a 700 gold lead just in the farm department alone.
Yeah, and this was the concern for the duo lane of Radical Rodents. Their ability to fight in, if it's not Jacob dropping somebody down on his own, is incredibly limited up against something like a Medusa and a Kepri, and they've, JUSTF6 that is, have optimized on that very well. Purple buff invade's likely going to continue throughout the map. Realizing that JUSTF6 have already got pressure in the duo lane, Maskill is able to drift his attention elsewhere on the map, helping out in the solo to pick up that blue buff invade. And this is exactly what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where JUSTF6 has kind of expedited their pace a little bit. It used to be a very reserved early game where it's just, we're only going to fight over mid camps and maybe even that. Otherwise, it's just farm, wait for the 5-man death ball. Not the case right now. JUSTF6 is dominant on the map. It's been quiet so far, no kills, But it's not for lack of trying. Radical Rodents are the ones who have decided, hey, we can't defend, let's not show up and try. Just let JUSTF6 kill us with 1,000 paper cuts.
Well, it's a push in here by Jacob after the blink. Beads now burned out of Sotos, and he is in danger, but he's got Rotwin here as the backup, and he doesn't have that Scarab's Blessing available to him to help out. Fails goes over the wall to try and get the kill. Sotos is living through a lot of damage, turning it back around. He hasn't gone down yet. Fails finally will connect the shot to get the damage with the cat. First blood does go to the Radical Rodents,
Big whiff.
but I'm not sure if Fails going to make it out of here. Good taunt in by Mast. And a couple of basics will trade it out as a 1-for-1.
1-for-1, but First Blood goes over to the Radical Rodents. That is a massive pickup. But despite having First Blood, to his credit, Fails still just about a level down. And look at the timing of that fight. Right in time for JUSTF6 to go ahead and pick up the blue buff, the back camps as well. Luckily for Radical Rodents, Fails had a delayed speed buff, so there's no real opportunity there for mass kill. But at the end of the day, First Blood goes their way, and that's about it. Everything else coming up JUSTF6.
Yeah, it's going to be a blue buff, a small back Harpy camp in between the blue and then the main Harpy camp that also was an offering one. Stolen away here by JUSTF6. So sure, they lose the initial First Blood bounty, but they still maintain that 1K plus gold lead over Radical Rodents this early. And I think that's a testament just to how much farm they've been getting. The fact that they lost First Blood, which is a 400 plus gold bounty, and they're still over 1,000 gold ahead.
Yeah, they lost First Blood, and then it went further ahead, by the way. That's just that macro play on the map. That's that ability to get aggressive. That's that knowledge of when you want to take these fights, why you're fighting. JUSTF6 show up to that engagement because they want the ability to move in towards these camps. They want the ability to control these timers, and Radical Rodents weren't able to get there in time to defend themselves. And you can start to see how this bleed is affecting the entirety of the map. One level in the soul lane, one level in the jungle already. Despite falling down, Sotos is still remaining even up against Ferricrick, and on the Morgan, you're kind of waiting a very long time for your ability to fight in, whereas Sotos, I would argue, once he finishes up that first item, will likely be able to start fighting himself. If I'm looking at Radical Rodents right now, the ability to fight early is completely contingent on the man you see on the screen, Jacob HL. This Kuzenbo has to be the pace setter for his squad.
He tried to get something going up in the mid lane, and whenever he finally did rotate over, it did start things up. But Mast and Rotwin are fishing for a kill here. A leap in towards Ferricrick. The taunt does catch him after the transformation. Ferricrick goes into the Amaterasu for a little bit of extra tankiness, uses that dazzling offensive defensively, and the bleed from that last breath will not be enough to take down Ferricrick. He'll live with just a sliver of HP in the fight.
Really surprised to see Ferricrick dash in aggressively there. Maybe just upset that he was forced to use the Changeling, wants to see if he can maybe turn nothing into something, goes in aggressive and loses out on the majority of his HP bar in exchange for it. Forced back to base, going to lose out on a lot of that farm as well. And the Radical Rodents 3 times now have been forced into an engagement at poor timing. JUSTF6 force a fight in mid, poke somebody out or get a kill, and then immediately reset themselves to the Radical Rodents jungle. We haven't seen Panvich pick up a blue buff since the very first rotation. Purple buff as well. This is going to be the second one that Radical Rodents are able to pick up if they can secure it, and they should be able to.
Yeah, Zola will get that one, but there is the timer. And Fails. A little bit of aggression here out of JUSTF6 will put some pressure there at his back Harpy camp. But that offering, the first obelisk will go the way of Radical Rodents this time around. And it might be kind of the first time since the obelisk comes in that we're seeing teams not really holistically kind of throw their lives away to steal all these offering camps out there. Just a little bit of aggression on the opposite side of the map this time around.
Doug, can we get a look at Fail's level priority order here? That jump did a lot of damage. I'm starting to think maybe he's putting some points there. That's a very aggressive decision. Generally, I like to see the third ability get some points towards it, but 2 now in towards the leap for Fails means that you are dedicating a large portion of your survivability for the ability to find burst damage. Maybe realizing that he's not really able to play that poke role because he's got a Morgan in mid and instead needs to be that primary source of damage for his team. But this is a double-edged sword. Very risky, especially considering he's already a level down.
He's going to have to be fighting an uphill battle here up against Maskill, who has started in now towards a heavy hammer, so going to get a little bit of extra health, a little bit of damage here online for the Circuit. In this solo lane, you can see where this pressure has come through. Maskill is already making his rotation to this right side of the map again. They really want to make sure that this blue buff cannot go to Panvich and keep him down for as long as possible. This is the first time he's really had an opportunity to go back and buy anything. We can see just off this back alone, he finally got his Berserker shield online, but also managed to upgrade that teleport all the way through, so that persistent TP, now with its new nerf, 110 seconds on that cooldown, will finally be online.
Yeah, I'm curious what the decision-making was behind upgrading it all the way to persistent. It is a slight gold investment, but I am not expecting Radical Rodents to be the ones aggressing in the duo lane. Toddy GR still sitting about a half level up over Zolot, has the more aggressive pick, so dominance around the Gold Fury likely favoring JUSTF6. So this could be a decision from Panvich saying, hey, I need persistent teleport so I can defend Gold Fury, so I can get over there quickly and often, make sure that that isn't going down as an objective. Or maybe it's because he's been getting poked out a lot in lane. He just wants the ability to get back and farm up. But regardless, sacrificing that bit of farm from behind is going to sacrifice some survivability in that same note.
We are lacking a little bit of defensive or kind of team-wide relics, I should say. For kind of both of these squads here, JUSTF6 does pick up the Frenzy from Rotwin, so that's going to give them a lot of objective push. On the side of Radical Rodents, both of their frontliners have gone for more so aggressive style ones. We do have the persistent teleport out of Panvich that'll help him keep farm, get him to the fights, but then a blink out of Jacob. So nothing team-based, no shells, no frenzies, anything like that to kind of keep the team up.
No, not just yet. Once we get over to level 12, I think we're going to see a couple pickups for both of these squads. Worth noting, Lestimix heads back to base, buys a full Frostbound Hammer in that second slot.
That's just gross.
It's disgusting. It really is, because first off, Osiris makes himself faster with that second ability when he's able to clip you with that. He also makes you slower with the sickle. Now he's going to make you slower with the basic attacks as well. It's going to be pretty difficult for Panvich to escape some of these situations. Luckily for Panvich, has some movement speed hard baked into the kit, as well as CC immunity in the ultimate, but I don't know, man. You're not taking any 1v1 trades in the Soul Lane as of now. Luckily for Radical Rodents, Lestimix has not upgraded his teleport just yet, so his oppression is going to be limited to the short lane.
All I'm saying is I'm glad that we have a minimum cap on how slow that you can be as far as movement speed is concerned, because it feels like Lestimix is trying to put them to negative movement speed at this point. But finally, a blue buff will be secured over here for the Radical Rodents. A nice rotation out of Fails early this time, as he sees that Lestimix is consistently putting the pressure in the lane, decides to get that blue buff up there and make sure that Panvich can finally have a little bit of a lane sustain for himself.
Yeah, that's going to help out not just his mana sustain, but his HP sustain as well. Can start spamming out that first ability, but maybe in picking up the blue buff leaves an opportunity for JUSTF6 to take the first neutral objective of the game. 11 minutes in, Pyromancer falls down, and it went down pretty easy.
Lestimix is the only one in any real danger here, sitting half health being chased by an Amma, but immediately, Radical Rodents will just turn away. First objective of the game will be that Pyromancer. Yeah, it doesn't seem like Panvich walked over to pick up that blue buff. So instead, they get the experience, or at least Fails got the experience. So that's happy for Fails, but maybe unhappy for Panvich not picking that one up. But Pyromancer does go to Radical Rodents to try and close up some of that gap that JUSTF6 has amassed themselves. I mean, the only real fight that we've had so far was that one in mid lane. It was a 1-for-1 trade, but it's just been a constant slope down in gold here towards JUSTF6. 4K gold, 2,700, or 4K experience, I should say, and 2,700 gold.
Yeah, and I think this is a byproduct of how that leveling up that JUSTF6 did during the SPL play-ins, man. It's this aggressive styling that they picked up during that event that has net them this gold lead. It really feels like the Radical Rodents are just very, very used to playing against the other European contemporaries amongst them, saying, okay, we're gonna group up as 5, and we're gonna line up, and we're gonna have an awesome team fight in the late game that decides the match at the 25-minute mark around the Gold Fury, but we're actually fighting over the Fire Giant. That's generally what we see from the European SEC and the SOC. And JUSTF6 said, hey, we tried that style, and it seems like getting aggressive, getting active real early, kind of dominates it. Kind of dominates the map insofar as macro farm, and we're seeing it reflected immediately. No kills on the board, just about 1-to-1 at the top of your screen. But this gold and XP differential is only continuing to grow. 3,000 gold, maybe not massive at this point of the game, but 4,300 experience, that is very, very difficult to fight into 13 minutes in.
I mean, it's not just, what they've done over their time, here just at this SPL qualifiers, but even all the times they've had to fight up against teams like Elysium and Belt Slap in the past, those were some of the more NA style of EU SCC teams out there. I mean, you had players from those two teams who have been in the SPL, so they know how to make those aggressive kind of macro plays early on in the game. So we're finally starting to see some of these Europeans develop that style of play. Jacob gets caught out in the middle of 4 people. Watery Grave might just be enough to get him out, but a Petrify over the wall. Toddy turns the support to stone here and fails. Tries to sleep in to get some damage, but it's only going to confirm on the mass kill there. And now it's a 5v4 over by this Gold Fury that JUSTF6 has pulled. They've already put it down to half health. Panvich tries to step up, but he's got to make a hero play if he wants to steal this one away. Might not get the opportunity to do so as Lastemics diverts the attention of 3 different players for the Gold Fury to go down. Even if he loses his life here, he might call that worthwhile, but he doesn't need to lose it because Rotwin is there to bail him out.
The very first usage of Scarab's Blessing that we've seen all game, and it seems to have been superfluous. Lastemics very adept at kind of dissuading anybody from Radical Rodents from stepping up to this Gold Fury. Ults in, eats up 2 dazzling offensives, and the Changeling ultimate, meaning that Farrakhan can have to spend a little while in that base form until that becomes available to him as well. And the Gold Fury goes the way of JUSTF6. And now that gold lead has started to match up to what we've seen in the experience department. This is becoming a very, very tall climb for the Radical Rodents. But I would argue that despite not showing up for just about any bit of the neutral farm, not showing up to defend too often, the Radical Rodents have done a pretty decent job of keeping this gold gap maybe palatable is the right word, something you could still look forward to fighting back into. As long as they can stem this bleeding for another 5-6 minutes, I believe that the Radical Rodents can show up to these Fire Giant fights pretty confidently. Their ability to initiate the fight around Panvich is going to be very strong. Dazzling Offensive is still one of the best engage tools in the game. Jacob HL, once he's got Panvich at his side, can kind of shift his own attention away from playing that aggressor and instead just peel out that back line. So hard to fight into a watery grave.
Taunted up against Faircrick will get his bead. Stunned just off the mark by mid laner Sotos. That will be a red buff attempt at steal there, but it seems that it did go the way of Radical Rodents. Jacob will eat a little bit of damage from Sotos here. But just putting aggression here in a couple of different lanes. We see on the left side, Toddy is split pushing and getting that tier 1 tower opened up, though he won't commit to trying to push that tower down necessarily. You can just see that's aggression across the board here out of JUSTF6. Every single lane is trying to get something going, trying to get a fight started, trying to get this damage pushed on these towers.
And yet again, JUSTF6, when they get aggressive towards that red buff, it's not even necessarily for the red buff itself. They got aggressive on the off chance of stealing a buff, but more importantly, after they had already pushed an entire minion wave into the tier 1 mid tower. They missed out, Radical Rodents that is, on 4 minions worth of gold and 3 minions worth of experience. And these small wins for JUSTF6 are just continually adding up. And even in grouping up around the red buff, force Radical Rodents to force split it.
Pull in onto Jacob. Rodwin gets thrown back into the tower. Now he's going to have to use that Scarab's Blessing for himself this time. The second time used, but the first time comes up big until he gets pulled back into tower by Fails, and that should finally be the kill on the Khepri. 1 kill up so far for the Radical Rodents. Good push, but mass kill. Gets an ultimate onto 1 just to keep himself alive. Panvich goes into the back line, but doesn't have that dazzling offensive to close out the distance and get a kill on the mast.
So now it's just Rotwin who's fallen so far. Radical Rodents take a clean win in this team fight. JUSTF6 getting over-aggressive in the tier 1 tower line, but there's not much left on the map. Pyromancer may be a feasible target, but a couple of people on Radical Rodents, low mana, low HP, Farrakhan can't step forward. This is a coin toss.
Sotos throws out the Cyclone, and that's going to make sure they have to at least get away from the objective for the time, but it seems that that is just enough to buy the time here for JUSTF6. They keep that objective on the map and deny that extra bit of farm. Instead, Farrakhan eats an insane amount of damage, but Sotos jumps in. I'm not sure if it was that he didn't have the mana to go for that last hit of the kill, or maybe just a little too far in the tower to try and confirm anything there. Farrakhan gets the rest on the laurels that he's not dying this time around, but that was very close.
Yeah, but he loses his Aegis in that same note, so now Mass Kill's got a pretty easy target he can try and lock down in some of these team fights. And J-Mac, I don't know, man. I feel like Radical Rodents probably should have left that Pyromancer up to a coin toss. You're already playing at such a large deficit, and it's not as if your composition just outscales massively up against JUSTF6. You could argue that Bastet's probably going to get a little bit more value from her build in the later portions of this game, only going to deal more and more damage up against targets like Toddy, GR, and Sotos. You could say that the Morrigan similarly is going to have that one-shot potential, but I'm not taking away from a Surcat on the other side. I'm not so confident that Tiamat scaling isn't just still phenomenal here in Season 9. So I would have liked to see Radical Rodents with a slight advantage, a weighted coin toss, to be willing to try and find something back, because in leaving it up, they left it up for the other team, JUSTF6. Just wander on over to the Pyromancer and real casual, like, pick it up for themselves.
That's going to be another 500 gold to them. The boost of walking out of the base a little bit faster, which means they're going to be able to get to these objectives just a little bit quicker. Primal Fury going to respawn here in just a few seconds, less than 20 until that one is back up. And you can already bet that JUSTF6 are going to want to try and play around there. Or maybe pull something like we've seen in the past, kind of bait the enemy team here, kind of bait Radical Rodents to go for it, because Radical Rodents do have the gold, or do have the vision on that Gold Fury pit. Maybe we see them make the switch up over towards Fire, but it doesn't seem to be the call as Radical Rodents start grouping up now that this Fury is alive.
Oracle Vision is over to the Rodents, and that will afford them the ability to watch this Gold Fury burn away. Belt pops. It's already down to 50%.
Masskill goes in the back and finds Zola. Meanwhile, fails. Has to try and get himself out, but he's being chased by Lastemics. Fury goes down to the side of JUSTF6. Jacob pushed down to half health by Rotwin, and Ferrokrick in the back line goes into the Amaterasu just for some extra defense and the dazzling offensive to get out. And now it's Panvich using his own defensively, but now he doesn't have any other defensive tools to his name. So it's a quick disengage out of Radical Rodents, but a clean objective out of JUSTF6.
Very expensive there from Radical Rodents. They maintained their beads and their belt, but all those ultimates going down opens up the door for just this. Aggressive play in the mid, and Jacob HL will fall down first. Credit for the kill to Toddy GR, and the Tier 1 tower will follow him to the grave just shortly after. Desynced Death already picks up the objective. JUSTF6 can full team reset now and start to walk their way over towards the Fire Giant. 30 seconds left on Jacob HL, and intelligently leave Toddy GR on this side of the map. There was an opportunity for Radical Rodents if they identified that the entirety of JUSTF6 had backed. They could have maybe gone for the Fire Giant. Between Zolat and Panvich, you've got the ability to burn these objectives pretty quickly. So that's why we see JUSTF6 leave this Medusa behind. Just a last line of defense on the off chance we see a Hail Mary play.
Sotos had about 2,500 gold in hand after that Fury went down in the fight. They were to go back and finish up their Rod of Tahuti and pick up a Tier 1 towards some extra penetration now with that Tier 1 magic focus. So a big power spike now online for this Tiamat. And immediately JUSTF6 start grouping around this Fire Giant. They don't have their Frenzy for at least another 30 seconds. But maybe they don't care about the Fire Giant as much as they do the fight, because Panvich gets pulled in, bursted down to a quarter health, and it's Jacob trying to push everybody away. That Watery Grave is doing a lot of damage towards Sotos, who's in danger. Has to get that Scared's Blessing on him just to stay alive. Toddy does find a nice Petrify, but now it's Ferrokrick in with the dazzling offensive.
Fails in some trouble in the back line. Has been isolated by the slow machine that is Lastemics, with a peel. Has worked its way back. Radical Rodents maintain all of their lives and force out a lot of incredibly valuable resources from JUSTF6. Scared's Blessing down for Rotwin. Sotos loses out on that Aegis as well, so Ferrokrick can now try and apply that one-shot potential in the backline. Doesn't quite have the Polynomicon just yet, but Doomworm's got a large infusion of power. Also has the double flat pen available to him. Looks to be moving to that Polynomicon in the next slot. I think that Radical Rodents have done a very good job so far of slowing down that Fire Giant. I would argue that JUSTF6 were favored 7-3 in that neutral engagement. Should have likely been able to pick up at least one kill, but trading aggro, moving in one at a time, Radical Rodents were able to slow down that aggression. And now we see JUSTF6 not quite as confident. They haven't just reset and walked immediately back to the Fire Giant. They're going to wait on some of these resources to come back up. 5 seconds on the bead from Lastemics. The same can be said of Masskill. I think once those are available, we're going to see the exact same fight again.
And that's kind of something that you were talking about earlier, which is even though this Radical Rodents team is down for 5,000 gold, they come towards this kind of late game scaling style here with this Morgan, turn into just about anybody, and if the enemy team is ahead, well then you kind of get to be ahead yourself on this Morgan up against the opposition. Considering that they're even here in the mid lane for Ferrokrick, level 18 to 18, he himself is not too far behind, but back to the Fire Giant. Goes F6, root onto Jacob, a lot of damage thrown towards the support once again. He's getting low, but he's going to be out just for now until Sotos puts him in the dirt. Masskill gets the ultimate onto him from his support, Rotwin. He'll be able to find his way out, but Ferrokrick will not. Caught in between Sotos and Toddy. That'll be another kill up for JUSTF6.
Man, Lastemics is just a machine right now. Hasn't even necessarily got the most defense available to him. Has gone for a relatively aggressive build, just slotting that Frostbound in the second slot, but it doesn't matter. People don't want to look at him, and he's got mitigation in the kit already, and he's just separating these fights so well.
Panvich pulled in again. Rotwin on this Khepri is basically just picking and choosing who his team is going to kill every time somebody steps up. It's a root, followed in by that Abduct. Fire Giant down to a third health. Rotwin is holding on to this one, but he's not going to be able to stay in the pit much longer. Maybe seeing if they can hold it just a little bit while longer, but they don't need to. Instead, it's JUSTF6 finally getting the Fire Giant for themselves. 23.5 minutes in, and Masskill gets an Aegis out of Zolot on that left side of the map. He's got 3 people staring him down, but it is a Circuit. He should be out of this.
I don't know. No cooldowns for a moment. Fails no ultimate similarly on the other side. But it's going to be coming up very shortly here. Not going to come up in time, though. Fails does not have enough CDR for that scenario, and that means Masskill gets to walk out, taking away Zolot's Aegis just absolutely for free. Fire Giant now on all 5 members of JUSTF6, and plenty of gold caches left on the map to pick up. 2 towers in the duo, and 1 each in solo and mid. I would argue that JUSTF6 do not necessarily need to pick up a Phoenix here, especially considering the timing of this Oni Fury spawn. This is going to be a massive infusion of golden experience. Not that they need it. At this point, most people already approaching level 20. We're already looking at just around 10,000 gold in the Chaos team's favor as well. So instead, you need to evaluate how strong the Radical Rodents are on base defense. And unfortunately for Radical Rodents fans, I'd argue not very strong. You don't have a traditional mage in mid. Ferricrick going to be very limited in his ability to take these fights in these simplified engagements around Phoenix defense, around tier 2 towers. He wants to get into the backline, and that's very difficult to do when the backline is all 5 of your enemies.
Once again, it's another route into another pull. Jacob, even with that Watery Grave, can't get past the petrified damage out of Toddy. That's going to be the first kill of the fight, going to JUSTF6. And a lot of damage in the backline by Masskill. It's going to force the ultimate out of Ferricrick and a quick dash away. And that's going to be all ultimates down now on the side of Radical Rodents. Meanwhile, JUSTF6 still have 2 of them, 1 for Lestemics, 1 for Rotwin. They'll be able to take that Phoenix quickly thanks to the help of that Belt of Frenzy that they picked up, that Belt of the Berserker. Now on cooldown, they take down tier 2, and they can march their way into that mid-Phoenix.
Yeah, not much of a defense here from Radical Rodents. Mid-Phoenix will fall down incredibly quickly, and I think the issue now is that Sodos is on cruise control. There's enough threat from everybody else on JUSTF6 that the Radical Rodents can't just ignore Lestemics. So you can't just walk past this Osiris. You haven't been able to burn away that Scare's Blessing, so even if you do close gap on a Sodos, he's got that line of defense available to him. But on that left side Phoenix fight, what did we see? Sodos free casting for 40 seconds, maintains both of his relics and Rotwin's ultimate. Somebody on Radical Rodents needs to generate enough threat to at least remove one of those resources.
And Soto's casting in the back line. Will throw that Cyclone on top of Jacob. It's going to push him right back out of the fight. He just came back off a cooldown. He's already going right back into the back line yet again. Double ult in by the frontliners. Puts a lot of threat onto Lestemics and Rotwin. Meanwhile, in that mid lane, we see the junglers squaring off against each other. Masskill on the worst end of that trade out. Lestemic goes into the back line. A pull onto Panvich will separate the back line from the front line, and it's Zolak going down first. All 3 birds taken away, and a full pour in here by JUSTF6. Fails, uses the leap aggressively to get some damage through, but Ferricrick has to use the ultimate defensively yet again just to get out. Now it's the Titan defense out of Radical Rodents. A great double stun, but the damage on the Titan is just too much. JUSTF6 are going to close out game number 1 just shy of 27 minutes.
And just game 1 was never once in question, was it? I mean, from minute 0, it was JUSTF6 playing with confidence on the map, the ability to control every single bit of neutral farm. Barring the very first rotation of buffs, I don't think we saw one purple buff go the way of Radical Rodents until maybe the 8-minute mark. The same can be said of the blue buff on the other side. Red buff invades consistently. Objectives all went to JUSTF6 through every portion of this game. Radical Rodents need to find an answer to that early aggression.
Yeah, it seems that this new style of play that JUSTF6 has adapted from their time in the SPL qualifiers, from their time in the SCC, all now culminating to this team that we see here. Radical Rodents have got to find a way to answer to it. They've got to find their way to adapt, because otherwise it seems that JUSTF6 might be running away with this set. We do have game 1 down. We're going to take it to a break, and we'll come back with game number 2.
Yeah. Talking to my mirror like I love you so much. Curving on my critics like I heard you, so what? You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. Tally all the I ever gave on my head. Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna help me, that's what made me a boss. You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. We don't give a that's what they don't understand. Back again like flu season, I broke records while loose leafing. I'm coming down my roof, leaving, don't give a I don't care. Did the by my lonesome, no wonder now I'm on one. No shortcuts on that long run, all I really want is my share. Get on my God, on my totem it's nothing. In the discussion, all them feelings I throw all my pain on percussion. It's disgusting, I hear them bragging about that they did and it do not move me, not in the least. They ain't been dropping no seeds in the soil, but swear that you on my spot at the feast. I've been on go mode, showboat, rowboat, wave ride.
Welcome back to the Smite Challenger Circuit Qualifiers. Game 1 of our first set of the day here is now done. JUSTF6 gave themselves a nice little win over Radical Rodents, and I can't really say it was a decisive or dominant victory more than anything, Mifflin. It was just this team was playing the map more than anything else. I mean, it was a very low kill count game. It wasn't until, like, what, 15 minutes that we saw actual fighting come out of this team. But JUSTF6 playing the map better than Radical Rodents for that first 15 minutes.
Well, you might not be confident enough to say it, but I'll say it. That was both decisive and dominant, man. Look, they chose to fight. Like, we saw exactly what the methodology was there. JUSTF6 showed up to literally everything that they could have to try and force an engagement, and one didn't come their way until about the 4-minute mark, and then we stagnated for the next, what is that? Okay, let's look at the top. Wow, 10 minutes later, and then we got another fight that JUSTF6 started, yet again, aggressively in the enemy jungle. Every single time they could, they forced a fight onto Radical Rodents, and the Radical Rodents tried to take the pacifist run. They wanted the path of least resistance in this game, and were met with a unstoppable force that is JUSTF6, who is just slowly and methodically stripping away every single bit of farm on the map, every single objective, and by the time we got to those late game team fights, it becomes so hard to evaluate what exactly was going right or wrong for Radical Rodents, because they were always playing into a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 gold deficit. Experience as well. Doesn't matter how well you're able to execute in these team fights if you're dealing less damage and simply take more than the opposition.
And there were kind of shades of life there in some of these earlier fights, at least out of Radical Rodents. You know, the fight around the Gold Fury, sure, that 13-minute fight that did go the way of JUSTF6. There was a lot of turnaround potential there for Radical Rodents. Unfortunately for them, Les Stemics then jumped in the back line and said, hey, everybody, instead of looking at my team, just look at me. Played perfect bait. And that was the first time that we actually saw the Scarab's Blessing get used. I mean, when you go 13 minutes in the game without having to use your Scarab's Blessing, got to feel pretty good for JUSTF6 here. Top of the damage charge just does go to Toddy on the side of JUSTF6 there in that Medusa. We can see just the potency that this god has. We can see just how much favoritism she has with just the amount of damage this god is able to put out.
Surprisingly, I didn't expect to see Zolot so high up on the damage charts either. Feel like he was having a little bit more so of a quiet match, but certainly was landing some pretty impactful ultimates in those late game team fights, trying to find some of that peel, and was able to return a fair bit. So signs of life, to be sure. Again, though, we talked about it for just a moment at the post of the game. I want to see some early aggression from Radical Rodents, or at least some way to stem some of that bleeding. You can't allow JUSTF6 to roll over the entirety of your jungle for 10 actual minutes.
It really just felt like JUSTF6 had a draft that was just better at winning the lanes more than anything else. We'll jump into picks and bans here for game number 2 and kind of think about maybe what Radical Rodent needs to change up in this second game, because it felt like every single one of their lanes, Mifflin, was just a loss in lane on paper. You know, Amaterasu's not going to win you too many lanes, especially up against Osiris.
Well, I don't know about that. Ama's pretty good.
Ama's pretty good, but Osiris is just a bully. I mean, there aren't a whole lot of gods that just outbox Osiris early.
Not a whole lot, no, but, you know, Ama's got similar levels of sustain. Had she had a blue buff, probably would have been able to take some of those boxing matches.
Probably
but
so.
Couldn't use any of her abilities throughout the entire laning phase. What is surprising, though, Thor ban, yet again. JUSTF6.
It's got to be respect.
Yeah, man, Fails' Thor is nuts, is exactly what JUSTF6 shot caller is saying.
I can only imagine that those are the exact words going through their head at this point. I can't see any other reason that you would ban it, unless for some reason their solo, I mean, unless Panvich has like the sickest Thor solo we've ever seen.
No, that's SOT.
In the SEC over for the European side. There, I'll give the extra copy. Okay. Well, Ducky's not in the SEC.
Oh, my bad. I don't know.
So then we'll throw that one here. So Thor, Kabrak, and Bacchus for JUSTF6, the band here. Bologna, Bastet, Fenrir on the other side for Radical Rodents. And an Osiris first pick, a god, like I said, coming into game number 1, we didn't see a whole lot during this auto attack warrior meta. We saw him kind of dominate the jungle in Season 8. Didn't really see a whole lot of him at the first half of Season 9, but now being a first pick priority for JUSTF6.
Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Listemics had a pretty fun time, I'd argue. If anything, they might not even be evaluating the relative strength of the pick. They could just say, hey, Listemics, you were like smiling and laughing a lot during that game. Might as well just let you do it all over again. And JUSTF6 to do exactly that. Keeping with that exact same ideology, let's go back to the Khepri. Worked out pretty well. Didn't even have to use one of your abilities for the first 15 minutes of the game. Maybe we run that back?
Fire enlightens and the fire consumes.
Maybe so. But on the mentality of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, they're going to actually take away a couple of picks here on the side of Radical Rodents, stealing both the Hunter and the mid laner from JUSTF6. Now it's going to go back to the drawing board for both of those two players. So it'll be an Agni as the first adjustment, kind of our first time we actually get to see Agni in here. He's been banned away so consistently as far as these mid lane bans have been concerned.
Big fan of Agni in the current meta. He's just so incredibly strong. You're going to wait a little bit. It's around level 5 where you hit your stride, but that's the story of Agni since his conception. Once you've got Rainfire available, though, your damage output hits a massive spike. And with recent changes to Agni, now Rainfire costing mana somehow was a buff. You can get some value from the Archmage's gem and things along those lines, which means that his damage output has only continually gotten better. Also really, really does utilize that double flat pen build very well. But I've seen some adjustments now from the Radical Rodents draft, and I would argue that they've done a very good job of mitigating some of the things that we saw lose them game 1. And I'm talking about that early aggression, the ability to fight before the 10-minute mark. It's there now. You've got Erlong Shen, you've got Medusa, even Sobek, pretty good at that phase of the game. So if we see JUSTF6 try and reprise the same style of play of just running it down everywhere they can, purple buff, red buff, everywhere on the map, there should be some critical fight back from the Radical Rodents.
Now the Radical Rodents does have this Erlong Shen, and they do have some of that pressure towards the dual lane Mifflin. Is there a lane in particular that you would like to see this Erlong Shen kind of rotate towards and try and put behind on the side of JUSTF6 and kind of bolster his team up a little bit?
When I was playing Erlong Shen jungle, if I saw an Agni on the other side, I would start salivating wildly. My coach would have to come over with a bib and make sure I wasn't drooling on my keyboard, man, because that is a pretty easy target for an Erlong Shen to chase out. You've got 9 turns Blessing, can deal with that dash pretty easily. You're usually going for that blink in the first slot, so you can get very aggressive against this Agni. And sure, Agni does decent damage, especially with some of the changes towards him, but his escapability is still relatively weak. Erlong Shen should have a pretty easy time locking him down.
Hachi Nim and Sun Wukong, the last 3 picks in the picks and bans for game number 2. Let's jump right into the game here. Game number 2 between JUSTF6 and Radical Rodents is starting now. No surprises on to where anything's really going out here. I think the Sun Wukong that we kind of just, or I should say that I kind of just grazed by at the end, probably one of the more interesting picks coming up in here. It's a guy that we don't see very often, and I'm surprised that with kind of the rise of Bluestone kind of making its way back in here that we haven't seen this god sooner, Mifflin.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Bluestone gods, I think of gods that have more abilities than everybody else. And when I say that, I mean gods that have switch stance. The King Arthurs of the world, the Tiers as well, that can really leverage that passive early on. Sure, Sun Wukong can apply that poke pretty easily and doesn't even necessarily need to use the Jinku Bang as poke because it does so much damage to the wave. I've seen a lot of these guys to max out Master's Will, the second ability instead. But there was a moniker that Sun Wukong earned back in Season 7 when we saw him get picked pretty consistently by one individual in the SPL. I'm talking about Ducky. And it was the God of You're Not Gonna Kill Me. The god of, hey, I'm going to live every single team fight. Not the god of, hey, I'm going to lock down your backline. The god of, I'm going to win lane. It's, I simply won't die. And considering the matchup that we saw between Listemics and Panvich in Game 1, that might be exactly what Radical Rodents need.
I mean, it goes all the way back to the classic days of his escape being called the Bird of, no, you're not killing me today kind of thing here. And then
who called it that?
That was, I want to say that was Bart who coined that one on the cast
Bart.
more than anything. That's where at least that's where I remember hearing that one from way back in the day, Season 1, Season 2 era, when that really kind of became popularized. But I was also back when Masters Will had a knock-up on it. I missed those days, I will say.
Yeah, he was busted.
He was.
Yeah,
Support Sun Wukong was one of the
gross.
funnest things to run ever.
He also like crit you all the time. I think his crit chance was like way higher.
It was on the passive, and you had to be low at that point.
Yeah, who
like
cares?
to get it.
I would love to be low. I'd knock him up, and then I'd crit him 40 times.
Would be a fun day to see. Maybe not today. It might not be as great today, but it was definitely a fun time back then. But instead, we are seeing some aggression, but this time out of Radical Rodents now. Pushing Sodas and Maskill, still getting aggressive here. Over towards this Oracle Harpy.
Whoa.
Double stun comes through with a
Whoa.
double dash. Sodos goes aggressive and might be paying the iron price for it as Farrakrick turns the fight around, gets first blood for himself. Maskill fishing for the opportunity to get a return kill of his own, slows down both of the Slice and Dice, and even Rotwin has made a rotation over. He's got the pull up against Fails, but Jacob is here. It won't be enough to save his life as Rotwin gets the kill with the Rising Dawn. Farrakrick on the run, but it's Maskill with another Slice and Dice to pull him down.
Okay, wasn't expecting both supports to be in the mid lane at the 1.5 minute mark, but I guess that's where we're at in Season 9. And gotta understand Isoto's feeling himself off that fight. Finds the double flame wave, double stun, double dash combo. But here's the thing about Erlong Shen. He's got Mannequin Scepter. You don't want to dash on that. Similarly, Jacob HL doesn't want to take a fight 1 versus 3. Does so anyway. Maskill credit for his second of the game. And just one moment where the Radical Rodents were feeling himself. One moment where they were able to pick up first blood, but immediately answered back. But this time, instead of just a 1-kill answer back, it's 3 for JUSTF6. Arguably worse start than what we saw in Game 1.
Just such aggressive play here
Is
out of
that purple
JUSTF6,
too?
even
Cool.
more. And that first blood bounty mitigated entirely back to a dead even state in just a moment's notice right afterwards. And look, Agni Dash level 1 doesn't do a whole lot of damage.
No.
It's not a very hard-hitting ability level 1.
Sure isn't.
But when you can get Rotwin to drag you through the entirety of it and keep the full burn application, then it does deal a lot of damage there. Slowly, but you will get that damage up there. Sodos, I thought maybe Sodos would be at the top of the charts here, but, you know, when you get 3 Slice and Dices off against, like, 2 different people, Maskill, he'll be topping the charts on damage, at least for now.
He will be, and, well, he's also topping the charts in experience, I believe. Ticks over to level 5, whereas Fails is sitting not so comfortably over at level 4, and when one jungler's got Eye of the Jungle and the other one's got Mannequins, you'd kind of hope that the one with Mannequins is finding his footing a little bit more so. That's not the case. Mannequin Scepter going to fall off pretty hard in the next 2 or 3 levels. I am surprised to see Maskill go for the Jotun's Wrath. Maybe just wants that CDR for that ultimate more consistently, but considering the level of aggression we've seen from Maskill to the jungle in both games 1 and 2 now, I think maybe I was expecting more something like Crusher or even a Brawler's Beat Stick for just that raw infusion of damage, but I guess if you want to talk about it, he landed 3 Slice and Dices in a fight with no CDR. How many can he do with?
Well, Zolot's going to use his ultimate, but that might not be enough to save his life. Another pull in by Rotwin, and another kill for Maskill himself. 3 on the board, 4 minutes into the game. Last game around, I mean, by this point, we were at 1-1. Now we're at 4-1 already, and 4 of those being on the side of JUSTF6.
But the goal difference at the 4-minute mark is less so than what we saw in Game 1. Experience as well is not quite as large as what we saw in Game 1. Radical Rodents, in losing some fights, have at least showed up to these neutral objectives, have at least showed up to take these engagements.
Maskill will reflect a little bit of damage over towards Fails, but has to use those beads against the 9 turns Blessing for the Erlong Shen. Fails at least keeping that pressure up on that right side and trying to mitigate some of that lead that JUSTF6 has been trying to build for themselves here off those first few kills. Another purple buff invade by JUSTF6, and this should surely spark a big fight between these two teams, or maybe not. Zolat will dash in, use it aggressively. Rotwin's thrown back by the pluck from Jacob, and a rotation in from Farrakrick. Blink in by Jacob. Rotwin has the ultimate, will use it. Hold himself off here. Stun out of Sodos does find Farrakrick. 3 bombs launched out, and 2 of them find the mid, 1 find the support. And that's a bailout there for the support on the side of JUSTF6.
Fortunately for Radical Rodents, they were at least able to secure their purple buff this time around, and Zolat is able to pick it up. Not like what we saw in Game 1, where the couple of times they were able to secure their buffs, they weren't allowed to take them for themselves. So JUSTF6, with great rotation, was at least able to save Rotwin's life. Sodos finds the double stun and puts out enough damage that Radical Rodents were not willing to chase out, and this is exactly what I wanted to see from the Chaos team, exactly what the Radical Rodents needed. The ability and confidence to show up and defend. Zolat throws out the ultimate. So I actually paused in real life. It lagged me. My MS went up. Yeah.
I turned over as soon as you paused and went, are you okay there for a
No,
moment,
dude, he
Mifflin?
just dashed out, man.
He
I mean,
just left.
did Zolot think? Yeah, I don't think he did.
I don't know.
That's it.
I don't know if he thought that Toddy had the cooldown up or not. That's the only thing I can imagine there. I mean, kind of showing your hand a little bit early, kind of telling that Fails may have already been on that side of the map, but Toddy dashes away, and that's one big safety tool away from Zolot. Does still have the beads, just in case the rotation comes that way, but Toddy's probably kind of just laughing there like, all right, cool, that's a nice ultimate you had there. I mean, thanks, I guess?
Yeah, Toddy's vibing. He's like, all right. So I'm probably getting ganked, but here's the thing about how it doesn't matter. And, you know, Toddy had ultimate. Toddy had dash. Toddy still has beads. I think the only way Zolot gets the value from that ult is if Toddy was, like, no hands on the keyboard and just, like, got turned to stone. Like, that's the only case. Because Zolot was also, like, completely I don't think he had enough to lacerate towards Toddy GR in that fight. But, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Zolot's going to get that ultimate up pretty shortly, but maybe not the purple buff. That one's going to go to Toddy.
Yeah, and that'll be a nice and aggressive play out of JUSTF6 once again. Do you see the gold still only sitting around that 700-800? Big bombs coming out of the mid lane, jumped by Farrakrick. We'll get him out of the route from Rotwin. And we can see a lot of aggression back towards that mid lane. Sotos has been getting a lot of bomb damage off in these last couple of fights. He landed all 3 in the last one to make sure to save Rotwin's life. Lands a couple in that little fight just to make sure that Farrakrick has to play a little bit more defensively on this Tiamat. We can already see the flat pen coming out from both these mages. Spear of Desolation first item up.
Farrakrick has not been splitting as much farm as Sotos on the other end, so slight experience advantage for the Tiamat. And I actually went cross-eyed there, J-Mac, because I was looking at the builds and I wasn't looking at the god icons, and I was so certain that we had JUSTF6 on the right-hand side because of Farrakrick's build, going for that conduit gem immediately into the Spear of Desolation. That seems to be the standard for Agni, but Agni said, sands of time, I want CDR. That's fine. It's gonna, you're gonna get decent value from that as well, and you're not really too much in need of additional damage because double flat pen is so strong on its own. But it is a little bit interesting to see that these two mid laners have essentially traded meta builds.
Man, that Pendulum of Ages does give you a lot of power late game, but maybe that CDR just a little bit more valuable here, at least for now, on the side of this Agni. Pin comes out to get some damage through, and we're still seeing that solo lane aggression, that solo lane presence that Listemix had in game number 1 shine through here in game 2 as he's keeping Panovic pushed back behind this tier 1 tower this early in the game. And over for these duo laners, I mean, Crusher first item back through for both of them, but Toddy with that purple buff invade now in danger. I say that, but it is a Hachiman. He still had that ultimate available. Toddy will be just fine. Don't know if I can say the same for his tier 1 tower though. Fails and Zolot are committing a lot to make sure that this structure goes down. First tower of the game very early and in the dual lane of all places.
Yeah, that is dangerous because now you've got the opportunity as Toddy GR to just not push your wave and just have it kept at the tier 2 tower. Not something that's pretty easy to execute on, but maybe a little bit easier considering he's got a level lead. Not concerned about it at all whatsoever, though, as he starts to push his way forward. And why wouldn't he be? Purple buff's coming up pretty shortly.
Zolot will dash under the tower, but that tower is not a safe place for you. Takes a lot of damage, and Toddy puts him down with the Eagle Eye autos right after. And a nice return kill. Thanks for taking my tower. Thanks for using everything to take my tower. We'll take your life instead. Rotwin thrown back by Jacob, but thrown back is the only thing that's going to happen there. Slowed down by the minion and by the lurking in the waters. Rotwin does still have that ultimate. Will pop it just in time to delay his life for at least another moment.
And that's all he does because Sotos had more pressing matters, namely red buff. And you know what? He's a mid laner. That's a support that died. I'd do the exact same thing. Maybe defending purple. Could be one avenue back in, but not going to be the case there either. Radical Rodents keeping this game very close at the 10-minute mark. Kills more so favoring JUSTF6 than what we saw in game 1, but I'd argue this is a much better position than we're used to seeing from the Rodents.
Last kill. Has to be careful there. That Minotaur comes out for just a moment by Farrakrick and immediately gets blown up by Sotos, so Mass Kill will not eat that brunt of damage. A couple of bombs out by Sotos, and this is kind of the benefit of having that 20% CDR on the Agni is you can spam those bombs, but Sotos not being a part of the last team fight there, I mean that's not really going to get a whole lot of value just yet. Instead, he'll have to go back to base, and he's instead of going towards what I probably imagine will be a Chronos Pendant here out of this Tiamat second item. Instead, he'll be going towards his second flat pin on the side of Sotos, another magic focus picked up.
Yep, Divine Ruin, more than likely. That seems to be core on Agni right now. What isn't core but has been locked twice for JUSTF6 is Frostbound Hammer. in the second slot for Lastemics.
Oh, mass kill facing the wrong way, ate a lot of damage. Toddy is here. Does he have the banner to secure the kill? He does, but he doesn't hit it. Instead, he has to expend the EI Jutsu and trades his life away, and Rotwin did not have Scarab's Blessing to save his life. A 1-for-1 trade out of the Hunters.
Yeah, I think once Toddy whiffed the Heavenly Banner, I think it's time to, like, cut your losses, all right? It's like, okay, well, I guess he just gets to live this one. Lucky for you, Zolot, but instead trades out his own life, and one of those two was worth more. Zolot wins off that trade.
So does his team, as Radical Rodents finally group themselves up for an objective, and it will be the Pyromancer going down. JUSTF6 had to lead, at least for the latter portion of this first half of the game, but now it's finally turned its way back towards Radical Rodents. First time they've had the lead since their first blood earlier on. See if they can keep the pressure up. A lot of bombs, a lot of damage here out of Sotos, but not enough to kill Jacob just yet. You can see those bombs are starting to hit this tank for about 200 damage each already.
Yeah, that is a lot of damage at this portion of the game, and it's only going to continue to get worse as he finishes up that Divine Ruin. On the other end, well, Jacob HL is not itemizing towards magic defense just yet. It's Sovereignty in the second slot, and, well, physical defense not going to go a whole long way against something like a Nemesis.
So let's hear as the Gold Fury is started up. A lot of damage that could come from this Medusa. We saw it put on display against Mast at the Tier 1 tower. Cyclone comes out, Sotos will dash away. And the Gold Fury has been leased for the time. Fails, goes in the back line, finds a few with that ultimate, but that's only going to lead him to his doom. Rotwin plucked back, and Lastemics pitting around the back line, just chopping away at everybody that he can. Rotwin will get that proc through just a little too early on the Lurking in the Waters from the Sobek. And that'll be a 3-for-none swing. Gold Fury started back up for Radical Rodents. Panvitz is going to have to make the hero play to steal this one away, but he's not going to get the opportunity to do so. 3 and a Gold Fury to JUSTF6.
Man, that is tough for the Radical Rodents. Specifically, Jacob gets the lesser end of that trade. I think Lurking the Waters was like single-digit frames away from being late enough to catch the Scarab's Blessing. Rotwin maybe had like 4, 5, 6 frames left of that death immunity, but luckily for him, was within that window and survives that fight. And then afterward, or before that rather, we saw Fails go for what could have been the engagement that won them the team fight, right? You go in with the 9 turns Blessing. He's able to clip one target. Unfortunately, does not clip Soto, so immediately gets stunned and then followed up on by all of that damage. Was not even allowed to survive long enough to get that heal up and available.
Quick beads out of Toddy, gets out of the pluck from Jacob. So now 1 relic on cooldown here for the Hunter. Hasn't gone back yet to pick up his Aegis, which would be the second one if he elects to go towards there. He doesn't have it just yet.
Yeah, but are you sure he's going to go for Aegis?
I'm going to imagine that he goes for Aegis. It seems to be the safer call for most of the Hunters.
Could be Heavenly, you know, who knows?
If he goes for Heavenly and not Aegis, I would actually be very surprised.
Yeah, you want to put some money on it?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
Mostly because I don't have any cash on me. That's the only reason so.
Fair. Jacob HL trying to escape a sticky situation here as he's been surrounded by the entirety of JUSTF6. Ultimate to escape the slow, but maybe only prolonging the inevitable.
Surrounded by 4, Masskill will dash in, but he doesn't want to go back to that tower and stare down Zolat. And support will make it out. Meanwhile, Faircrick decides that they don't want to be a part of this fight at all. Instead, it'll be a push down mid lane with all the lizards to his name to push that tower down.
Yeah, is able to at least put some pressure on that tier 2 tower, and a pretty large commitment from JUSTF6 on the opposite side of the map. Surprised to see them have 4 members in the duo lane, considering they just cleared out the Gold Fury. It just seems like there's not a whole lot to fight over there. Maybe just Jacob was the entirety of the plan. Let's shut down this Sobek, get a little bit more farm for ourselves, and then see what happens afterward. Nothing came up of it, but it did cost them a couple of their cooldowns. Toddy GR's ultimate still on cooldown, Masskill as well. Does not have his ult either. It'll be a little while until he can get active on the map.
So he's plucked back, but he does have his dash, so he'll be fine. Instead, it's a pull in by Rotwin against Jacob. Fails to put some poke through, but those bombs that were dealing 200 to Jacob earlier are starting to deal 400 damage upwards now to the jungler. No real protections to his name, magic-wise at least. Fails is starting to feel the damage that can come out from this Agni, and it won't be a Divine Ruin actually this time around. It'll be a Spear of the Magus' pickup.
Yeah, okay, so you're going to tag a target, and it's going to take additional damage from all of your abilities, which is just phenomenal, but I was expecting Divine Ruin because it's just like a little bit more applicable as AoE in some of these team fights. And then immediately goes into the tiny trinket tree, maybe a Typhon's Fang. Be pretty surprised if you see like a Pythags piece on an Agni, not something exactly I'm used to seeing, or even a Bancroft's Talon that seems to have not really been the popular option recently. So I'll keep my eyes.
Maybe Soul Gem, possibly?
Could be. I hope not.
I mean, it's an extra 10% CDR, get him closer to that CDR that he seems to really be wanting to go here.
God, he does love CDR, doesn't he? You might have got it. He's also 2 levels down. Did you notice that?
Yeah, that's because he's been going to a lot of fights, and Faircrick's been doing a lot of farming in these first 16 minutes. He's going to get plucked back, and he'll be able to leap away thanks to the help of Jacob here to put some zoning out. Lystemix, though, really wants this fight. Level 17 on the Osiris has his 3rd item online now. Shogun's Kasari plus the Berserker. And then the Frostbound, he's going to be swinging real fast, and whoever he's hitting is going to be not swinging real fast up against them. Plucked back, force the Lord of the Afterlife. That'll pull the Fire Giant to do some big damage there. But a good ult out of Rodwin will make sure Lystemix stays alive. And Maskill even throws his ult out against Zolat to keep the Hunter zoned out.
Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the map, Toddy GR making use of this free reign and going to pick up that tier 2 tower on his own. Radical Rodents have to do something here. Might just be Rotwin, the target of their aggression.
Rotwin does not make it out of here. It will be Zolat. Lystemix, who had almost died in the last fight, teleports back in, only to see his support go down. But just like Faircrick, who wasn't joining in on a lot of these fights earlier on, it's now Toddy who's doing a little bit of split pushing of his own. Tier 2 tower on the left side of the map goes down. And so Pyromancer is the trade out here, so Radical Rodents pick up a kill and they pick up an objective to keep themselves in this game. Only about 2,000 gold down right now.
I wonder if they could have gone for the Fire Giant. They had TKO'd Lystemix. They knew Toddy couldn't rotate to that fight because he's all the way on the opposite side of the map. And they'd even removed Rotwin from the game by sending him back to base in a body bag. So they had essentially had a 5 versus 3 around the Fire Giant pit, but looking at the relics available to Radical Rodents, no belt available means that you're really not able to shred super easily. But between Zolat, Fails, even Faircrick, the DPS on objective is relatively high. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think I may have made the call to go for the Fire Giant, just cuz.
Just go for it. Why not? I mean, at this point,
5 versus 3, why not?
You got a pretty even game going through. I mean, Lystemix did just use the teleport right in there, but now there was no resources. His ultimate was down. His relic was down at the time going through. He didn't have his beads. I can see them maybe going for the fight there. Instead, they do take the safer option with the Pyromancer. So they lose out on a tier 2 tower in left lane, which is not the most ideal trade out to have for a Pyromancer. But now with this Primal back up, you can see JUSTF6 are starting to group around left side to maybe go towards this objective. Radical Rodents a little bit slower on the get together to try and group up here towards this left, but now all 10 players on the map at least kind of grouped on this side.
We'll see which team's got the advantage going forward. No beads available for Lystemix and no teleport either. It means that he's only playing with the 1 life, can't reset and TP back in. It's JUSTF6 with the defensive positioning already, pulling out the Primal Fury, dropping it down to just over 80%. But the Radical Rodents, unfazed, are at least showing presence and making sure that JUSTF6 don't feel confident finishing it off.
Maybe a beads instantly out of Sodos. Good pluck by Jacob to remove that relic from the map. A blink in by Fails. He'll find Toddy. Panvich goes in once again. He is forced up into the ultimate now himself. Maskill is 1v1ing against Fails and winning that fight, but now the rest of the group has come through. Zolat goes down. Panvich should surely follow right afterwards. It's a 2-for-1 trade so far in the fight. Faircrick wants more, though. He wants Toddy's life, but good body blocking keeps Toddy alive for a little bit longer. Dash from Sodos is doing a lot of damage in this fight, but he's going to get plucked back into the clutches of Fails. Aegis will keep him alive. Faircrick goes down, but so does Sodos. Mid laners are gone, and now it's the jungle and the support on the side of Radical Rodents trying to get this kill against Rotwin, but Lystemix will not let it be.
Here's the thing about Lystemix. He hits pretty hard, and he's pretty survivable in these fights. I think as long as Radical Rodents can engage with Fails onto Sodos, you're winning the team fight. If you can find 9 turns Blessing onto Sodos, the team fight goes so much better. But what happens there? Yet again, Fails goes in with the ultimate, blinks forward, drops his ult. He hits like 1 target. It's not Sodos. So what happens? Sodos dashes away, he drops a stun onto 3 people, and you get just about no value from the 9 turns Blessing, besides just getting the heal. That's essentially all that ultimate was used for in that fight. Luckily for Radical Rodents, after that point, they'd done a good enough job of splitting up the engagement. Sodos was left alone on an island, allowed Fails to re-engage and finish off that kill. Rotwin had already used his ultimate as well, so there was no way to peel out there. And it turns into a relatively even trade, which is phenomenal for the Radical Rodents. We're looking at a dead even match, 21 minutes in. But taking a peek at the relics, They're all down. Ultimates as well, coming back up for everybody. This is going to be possibly the most honest Smite fight we ever see.
Teleport was expended now on the side of the JUSTF6 solo lane, so it's only Blink available for the fight. And I say that now, the Belt of the Berserker comes up for Rotwin. So we'll see just how this fight goes as far as main team fight relics go. Only Frenzy's up for both of the teams. Blinks are starting to come off of cooldown after that long extended fight. But JUSTF6 aren't going to full commit to pulling this Primal Fury just yet. Instead, they'll go ahead and de-ward some of the deeper wards that Radical Rodent has put on their side of the map. I gotta imagine if Fails can get in there and find at least 2 people with these 9 turns blessings, surely that's enough for Radical Rodents to really get that fight going.
As long as one of them is Sodos. That's all I want. Just one of them's gotta be Sodos in these fights.
Stemix will get thrown right back into a pin. He's not too worried himself. Instead, it might need to be Jacob who's worried, as he's down to a quarter health and falling rapidly. He's got to get himself out. Lystemix dives into the back line, and Masskill will dive his way out. Now Soda's the one in danger. No relics until just now. The beads have come back up. No hold on to him for the time being, but Lystemix tries to take a boxing match against Zolat, and Zolat is going to win that one and put a kill up now for Radical Rodents.
Thin margins win Radical Rodents that team fight. Ferricrick and Jacob find themselves with less than 500 HP to their names at the very end of it, but the target of aggression for Radical Rodents has been incredibly good, man. I mean, Sodos has not been allowed to cast in these last 2 fights. Sure, he hasn't been eating the ultimate from Erlong Shen, but he's been taking enough damage that he's essentially been forced out and is not allowed to be that mainstay source of DPS for his squad. Lystemix tries his best to create space in that engagement, does so beautifully. He creates space at the cost of his own life. Unfortunately, 30 seconds left in the grayscale for him. And it just feels like Radical Rodents have really found their footing in bringing that early game aggression and being able to show up and stop JUSTF6 from just taking every single objective early on. Radical Rodents have gotten to the portion that they are strongest at, the late game 5-on-5 team fight.
And with Sodos not really having his relics to start that fight out, he does get pushed out. We saw that he wasn't really able to get the damage out that we'd seen in the previous fights out of this Agni because of that. We do see that this fight finally does go the way, Radical Rodents finally get a team fight that goes heavily in their favor at the very least to say there. Repausing the action, but now we're right back into it. And it's the Primal Fury picked up, started at least, by Radical Rodents. It's good zoning out here, Fails in danger. Primal Fury still getting juggled back and forth. Not really willing to make a commitment here on the side of Radical Rodents to take this objective. Gets picked up by Rotwin, and it just keeps getting juggled back and forth. No full commit ready for these teams yet.
Man, that was an ugly last 10% of the Primal Fury's HP bar. Both teams throwing out massive abilities trying to secure it, but both teams having it reset just so they're able to channel them out. But at the end of the day, it's a wash. Nobody wins that engagement. But taking a peek at the relics, maybe the beads being lost out for Panvich, come back and bite them. You lose the blink for Jacob, so your engage takes a pretty major hit, but you still have got the ability to use 9 turns blessing. No blink for Fails, though, so he's going to walk in the old-fashioned way. But which team has regrouped faster? It's JUSTF6. They're already on the Primal.
Primal started up, down to a quarter health. The Frenzy popped to make sure they could keep it going.
No
but Radical
way.
Rodents with the Petrify out of Zolat. Seems to have been what was necessary to steal that one away. And now the fight going the way of Radical Rodents, at least. Lystemix down to a quarter health. Panvich in the back line distracting with the decoy. And they're looking pretty healthy on the side of Radical Rodents. Big bombs, though, out of the mid laner. Sodos puts the hurt on Ferricrick, puts the hurt on Zolat, and Toddy takes down Jacob for walking too far forward. Give it a double now to the Hunter. Maybe even give him a triple kill. No, it's Mask who takes away the 3rd kill of the fight.
You know what? It was a wise man, J-Mac, who once said, if you land a pluck in the late game on a carry that has beads, you simply die. I'm quoting iRaffer. And what happened to our friend Sobek, Jacob HL? He landed a pluck on a carry, and he died immediately. This time at the cost of his entire team as well, who were trying to follow up and make sure that on the tail end of an engagement, the Radical Rodents were able to secure a win. Unfortunately for them, having taken the objective was not enough. They wanted more. They wanted to double dip in the sauce. And what is the one social convention that you never break? You don't double dip, man. It's gross. So they lose out on the team fight, and they lose out on the Fire Giant in the same note. JUSTF6 from the brink. We're able to reestablish dominance.
We're getting a triple dip here. Not just the Fury, not just the Fire Giant, but a Pyromancer to boot. And that near 2,000 gold that Radical Rodents had amassed himself right before that fight has quickly shot the opposite direction. Nearly a 5K gold swing total, puts JUSTF6 3K up after just one bad team fight for Radical Rodents. And it's another case where Sotos got to kind of stay alive during the fight, used those beads, keeps himself alive there, and gets some huge bombs off. I mean, those carries ate at least 2 bombs during that fight.
Yeah, I think he shot 5, landed 2, and he only needed to land just the 1. The stuns as well. Massive from Sotos. I thought that fight was a clean win immediately, but Soto stops the aggression after the Sobek pluck. Sobek just straight up dies to Toddy GR because he plucked an ADC in the late game who had beads. And then from there was no follow-up to peel out for him. The Ferrokrick was stunned, Fails was stunned, Jacob HL was stunned, and Ferrokrick and Fails both took 450 damage each from the bomb. That's enough to dissuade me, and I'm sure them as well, from continuing their onslaught. It still cost them their lives at the tail end. And now Fire Giant on 5 members of the Order team, with only 2 Tier 2 towers standing between them and the exposed birds of the Radical Rodents, and a team composition for JUSTF6 that is incredibly adept at sieging these towers. Agni is really going to get a chance to shine in these simplified engagements. It's going to be much easier for Rotwind to find priority targets with these abducts. That said, Radical Rodents this time around have got themselves a comp that is much better at defending. They've got a standard mage in Ferrokrick. Tiamat can have a very easy time applying her damage. If anyone steps too far out of line, Jacob HL can replace them, or displace them, I should say, into the Phoenix for about 2 more seconds. Never mind, Toddy GR's beads back up. Probably don't want to pluck him again. But I'm sure Jacob learned his lesson from the last time.
I hope so. Hopefully he can get a pluck on at least some priority of a target. Maybe find Rotwind, kind of keep that support away from the carries. Maybe allow for the rest of his team, such as Panovich and Fails, to get in there and try and get some damage up on the carries. But it's a 2 for 3 split now here. 2 in the mid, 3 to the right side. And that Phoenix is not taking a lot of damage. In fact, any little bit of poke that's going its way is being healed back up thanks to that Interceptor out of Jacob. You can see that healing aura around it. This 2v2 is not going favorably for the side of Radical Rodents. Fails will get the heal back, but Panovich had to use ultimate. Fails had to use ultimate. Jacob had to use ultimate as well on the right side, but he's not going to get out bombed just off the mark by Sotos. See the killing blow on the Ferrokrick, but right side Phoenix down. Mid lane Phoenix sure to go next.
Man, Sotos is going wild in the late game right now. Somebody has to put a stopper to this guy. It's got to be Fails. It's got to be Panovich, but neither one of them has been able to step up and slow down this Agni. Right side Phoenix falls. Mid Phoenix follows it shortly after, and only one remains standing. And it's got to be traumatized. Just watch its brothers die.
It's not going to be
no
an
laugh?
easy defense.
Nothing? You stared at me blank, man. Come on, bro.
It was good. I will give you that. It was good. It may not
I
have
don't
gotten
think it was.
It may not have gotten the chuckle, but it was
seem
good.
good.
I got a smile in my heart, and that's what counts, Mifflin. Left side Phoenix. Yeah, the trauma was enough here. It's going down quickly, and so is the carry. All 3 bombs out of Sotos lands onto Zolat, and that is a dead Medusa, if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, it seems like Medusa didn't have the beads or Aegis buttons bound, because both of those relics are still available. Well, he's going to have it back up in about 40 seconds when he respawns.
Another big bomb. This one on the Panovich takes a quarter of his health, and that's this double flat pen and the percent pen online now for this Agni. Sotos is swinging for the fences, and he's hitting hard. Mass kill goes in. Rotwind there with the Scare's Blessing to make sure that Mass stays alive, and it doesn't matter because the ultimate goal is the Titan. And that'll be a 2-0 for JUSTF6.
And around a similar time frame as well, right? Wasn't game 1 like 27:30 or something like that?
Something around there.
It was a little bit more of a roundabout path this time around. Love what I saw. The adaptations immediately from Radical Rodents really made that game a lot more contentious at every portion of the game, just until that very last Gold Fury fight. It was, I'd argue, dead even. It could have been anyone's match, but unfortunately for them, the adaptations came in game 2, so they don't have a third one to look towards. JUSTF6, congratulations, moving on in the winner's bracket.
Yeah, winner's bracket move on here for JUSTF6. Unfortunately for Radical Rodents, they've got a much longer path down into the loser's bracket. We'll take a break, and we'll come back to break down game 2.
giving in, you're reaching out, but I swear it's not that easy, no. Don't call me a liar, then I call you a liar, 'cause I'm not a liar, and your friend has said that I want you, but I don't need you, no, no. You know I'm right, 'cause your light's kind of fading now. What I would do for you, I won't let me go, 'cause we're running dry. Just hold me now while I hold you tight, 'cause I pull you in, then I throw you out, but I swear it's never easy, no. Now we're standing here at this plain place while I'm giving in, you're reaching out, but I swear it's not that easy, no. It's not. Don't call me a liar, then I call you a liar, 'cause I'm not a liar, and your friend has said that I want you, but I don't call me a liar, then I call you a liar, 'cause I'm not a liar, and your friend has said that I want you, but I don't need you, no, no. But I don't need you, no, no.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. A Game 2 victory. Took them a little bit longer, just a little longer this time around for JUSTF6 to get that one out in a much closer fight here up against the Radical Rodents. But at the end of the day, it is JUSTF6 who come out on top. But I think it's right to kind of highlight kind of the benefits that Radical Rodent had, the adaptations they made here in game number 2, to make this victory a little bit more difficult for JUSTF6.
Yeah, I think it was evident at literally the second spawn of purple buff when they showed up and tried to put up a defense there. And as well, the blue buff on the other side. They kept it even throughout the early portions of this match, but slowly and surely, JUSTF6 were able to find their footing, find a couple of miraculous plays, specifically around Sodos, man. That Agni play in some of these late game team fights was the difference maker for JUSTF6, and in those team fight wins, they also won the game.
Yeah, I mean, early team fights, not super fun for Soto, so whether it be the plucks, not getting quite the damage out that he wanted to, but once those late game team fights kind of came through, that's when we really got to see the damage that this Agni is able to put out. This flat pen meta really does seem to benefit this god, that Obsidian Shard. Late game putting in some big numbers for this Agni, and a full CDR build out of him to say the very least here. We got to see bomb after bomb after bomb, a 4-2-7 slash line to end the day, but I don't think that is quite the story to tell with the amount of damage that this mid laner was able to put out.
Yeah, sometimes your slash line is not indicative of your impact on the match, and I would argue that Sotos, despite having a phenomenal slash line in this game, probably deserved a little bit more. The rest of his squad similarly puts out massive numbers. 27,000 for Sotos, going to top the charts in this match, but followed closely by Ferricrick on the other side at 26.5, and then 25 from Toddy GR. I really got to highlight Lestimics as well. 2 games on this Osiris, 2 times picking this guy that is a little bit less standard, I'd argue, in recent months, recent weeks, and 2 great performances, just creating a ton of space on the map.
Yeah, very tanky out of him too. I mean, damage mitigate is a stat that we don't get to talk about too often when you kind of compare that to the build style that Panvich went there, able to get 17,000 more damage mitigated, able to stand in the back line of the enemy team for so much longer than Sun Wukong is. Sure, Sun Wukong has some nice sustain with that ultimate, but that ult's not going to really do all that much for as far as soaking up all the damage, because once I know that it's a decoy, get one nice little bit of CC, and that's going to kick that one away.
Yeah, but you're at least like up in a cloud, intangible. Sometimes you're invisible if the decoy's alive too. You land with damage. No, Sun Wukong is the god of live more. We said it in Season 7. I'll say it again in Season 9.
Let's take a look at the schedule and the bracket to see what kind of impact this all makes here. First, looking at the schedule, remember we had the forfeit earlier on, so Team Bisco will move themselves on into the winner's bracket. Radical Rodents falls down into the loser's bracket, meaning JUSTF6 will keep their chances in the SCC qualifiers alive just a little bit nicer here as they maintain themselves in the winner's bracket. We got Team Copyright and Otrios Angels next, and Ogie Bogies, and I need to double check it. It's Zinedine Zidane is actually the way that you pronounce the other team that Ogie Bogies is going up against.
Yeah, that's actually a French soccer player. Did you know that?
I did know that after it was told to me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mifflin. And thank you to our guys behind the scenes who are keeping this bracket updated for us. Now we can see JUSTF6 will go up against Team Bisco in the qualifier round. But next up, like I said, it's Team Copyright and Otrios Angels, and Ogie Bogies and Zinedine Zidane will be facing off. And then the winner of those two matches will face after that one. And that's just the first half of this bracket, Mifflin. I mean, every time we come to this bracket and see 16 teams stacked on top of each other, it's kind of intimidating. I'm not gonna lie.
It's a lot of Smite, double elimination as well. So if you're fans of some of the teams that have already fallen down in both North American and Europe brackets, don't worry. They're gonna get a chance to try yet again, but with a little bit higher stakes, I'd say. Lose again, you're just out.
Yeah, lose again, you're out. Lose one more time, in the winner's bracket, you still got a chance here. But with our third match coming up for the day, our second match of the day specifically coming up next, we're going to take it to a quick break, and then we'll be right back.